Ever wondered what happens when you come home early from a business trip to find someone has turned your house into their personal palace? Smash that like if you think squatters should come with eviction notices, and drop a comment if you've ever had someone make themselves way too comfortable in your space. My name's Marcus, and I should probably start by explaining that when I say mountain mansion, I'm not being pretentious. I'm being literal. My house sits on 43 acres of pristine Colorado wilderness, complete with a circular driveway, stone facade that cost more than most people's cars, and a view that makes grown men weep tears of pure envy. I'd been in Singapore for 6 months working on a tech merger that was supposed to make everyone involved disgustingly wealthy. The kind of deal where you live in 5-star hotels, eat meals that cost more than rent, and completely lose track of what day it is because every day blends into conference rooms and handshakes worth millions. The plan was to stay until Christmas, but the deal closed 3 weeks early. Apparently, nothing motivates corporate executives like the promise of holiday bonuses that could fund small countries. So there I was, Tuesday morning at 6 a.m., sitting in first class with a champagne hangover and an overwhelming desire to sleep in my own bed. I didn't call ahead. Why would I? It's my house. The drive up the mountain was exactly what I needed after 6 months of Singapore's humidity and concrete jungle. Pine trees, crisp October air, and the kind of silence that makes city people nervous. My Range Rover handled the winding road like it was born for it, and with each mile, I could feel the stress of international business deals melting away like snow in spring. Until I turned into my driveway and saw another car. Not just any car, a bright yellow Jeep Wrangler with enough bumper stickers to qualify as a mobile political rally. Coexist, live, laugh, love. Wine is my spirit animal, and my personal favorite. I'm not bossy, I'm the boss. The kind of vehicle that screams, I have opinions about your life choices, and I'm not afraid to share them. I sat there for a moment, engine idling, trying to process what I was seeing. The rational part of my brain suggested maybe my property management company had hired new maintenance staff. The paranoid part wondered if I'd somehow driven to the wrong house after 26 hours of travel. But no, there was my house number carved into the stone pillar. There was my custom-made front door with the lion head knocker that cost more than some people make in a month. And there were my security cameras pointing in all the right directions. So whose car was parked in my driveway like it belonged there? I pulled up behind the Jeep and killed the engine. The silence was immediate and complete. No city noise, no traffic, just the kind of mountain quiet that makes you aware of your own heartbeat. I grabbed my overnight bag from the passenger seat and walked toward my front door, keys already in hand. That's when I noticed the changes. My front porch, which I'd left carefully arranged with expensive outdoor furniture, now looked like the waiting room at a yoga studio. Wind chimes that definitely weren't mine hung from the eaves, creating a symphony that sounded like a meditation app having a nervous breakdown. Potted plants I'd never seen before clustered around the entrance like they were staging an intervention. But the real surprise was the doormat. Gone was my tasteful welcome mat in understated gray. In its place sat a rainbow-colored monstrosity declaring "good vibes only" in letters so aggressively cheerful they practically assaulted the retinas. I stood there, key halfway to the lock, trying to reconcile what I was seeing with what I knew to be true. This was definitely my house. But it looked like it had been redecorated by someone whose design philosophy involved buying everything from the live, laugh, love section of home goods. The key turned in the lock, at least that still worked, and I pushed open the door. The smell hit me first. Where my house used to smell like expensive leather and oak, it now reeked of patchouli and something that might have been homemade granola. The entryway, which I'd left clean and minimalist, was now cluttered with shoes that ranged from Birkenstock sandals to fuzzy slippers shaped like unicorns. I stepped inside, bag still in hand, and called out tentatively, "Hello?" The response was immediate and came from what sounded like my living room. "Oh my God, there's someone in the house." A woman's voice, shrill with panic, followed by the sound of furniture being knocked over and what might have been a small dog having an existential crisis. "Call 911, the voice continued. "There's a burglar, in my own house, using my own key." I set down my bag and walked toward the living room, each step revealing new horrors. My carefully curated art collection had been replaced by motivational posters that would make a high school guidance counselor cringe. My leather furniture was buried under throw pillows embroidered with phrases like blessed and namaste in bed. And there, standing in the middle of my living room, clutching a phone to her ear like it was a lifeline, was a woman who looked exactly like what you'd get if you ordered a stereotypical HOA president from Amazon. She was maybe 55, with that particular shade of blonde that comes from a box and costs too much to maintain. She wore yoga pants that had clearly never seen actual yoga, a hoodie declaring Mama Bear, and an expression of righteous indignation that suggested she'd been practicing it in the mirror. Yes, 911, she was saying into the phone. I need police immediately. There's a man breaking into my house. Her house. I stood there, in my own living room, watching this woman call the police on me for breaking into my own property, and all I could think was, and I thought the merger negotiations were surreal. The woman. Let's call her Karen because if it walks like a Karen and talks to 911 like a Karen, it's probably a Karen. Continued her dramatic phone performance while I stood in my own doorway like a tourist in my own life. He's just standing there, she hissed into the phone, pointing at me with the kind of finger-pointing usually reserved for courtroom dramas. Tall, dark-haired, wearing expensive clothes, probably casing the place for weeks. Expensive clothes. I looked down at my rumpled business suit, which had survived Singapore humidity, airline food, and approximately 37 hours of travel. If this qualified as expensive, Karen clearly hadn't seen many actual burglars. Ma'am, I said, trying to channel every ounce of patience I'd learned in international business negotiations, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Don't talk to me, she shrieked, backing away like I was carrying a chainsaw instead of an overnight bag. The police are coming. I certainly hope so, I replied, because I'd love to have them explain why there's a stranger living in my house. That stopped her mid-shriek. For exactly 3 seconds. Then she laughed, the kind of laugh that sounds like a hyena having a mental breakdown. Your house, she gasped between giggles. This is my house. I've been living here for months. Months. She'd been living in my house for months. I looked around my living room again, taking in the full scope of the Karenification. My minimalist decor had been replaced by what could only be described as aggressive positivity. Throw pillows declaring good vibes only competed for space with wall hangings that featured inspirational quotes in Comic Sans font. My carefully selected color scheme of charcoal and cream had been murdered and replaced by a rainbow explosion that would make a unicorn nauseous. Months, I repeated slowly. You've been living in my house for months. This is not your house, Karen declared with the confidence of someone who had clearly rehearsed this argument. This house belongs to the Riverside Mountain Community HOA. I'm Karen Patterson, the president, and I've been managing this property since the previous tenant abandoned it. Abandoned it? I'd been in Singapore closing a business deal, and Karen had apparently declared my house abandoned. Ma'am, Karen, I wasn't abandoned. I was traveling for work. This is my house. I have the deed, the mortgage statements, the property tax receipts. Anyone can fake paperwork, she interrupted, waving her phone like a weapon. The fact is, this property was clearly vacant, and under HOA regulations, we have the right to assume management of abandoned properties for community benefit. Community benefit. She'd moved into my house for community benefit. That's when I noticed the dog. A small, fluffy creature that looked like it had been designed by committee to be as annoying as possible. It was currently yapping at me with the intensity of a smoke alarm, while wearing what appeared to be a hand-knitted sweater embroidered with Princess Precious. Is that your dog? I asked. Princess is a therapy animal, Karen announced proudly. She helps me manage the stress of community leadership. The therapy animal was currently attempting to mark its territory on my Persian rug, the one that cost more than most people's cars. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and reminded myself that violence is not the answer to life's problems. Even when life's problems involve finding a crazy woman living in your house, with a therapy chihuahua named Princess. Karen, I said, opening my eyes and summoning every ounce of diplomatic training I'd learned in business school. I understand there might be some confusion here, but I assure you this is my house. I can show you documentation. Fake documentation, she screamed, apparently deciding that volume would strengthen her argument. I know a scam when I see one. You're probably working with one of those house flipping schemes, trying to steal property from hardworking community leaders. House flipping schemes. Because obviously, the most logical explanation for someone having keys to a house was an elaborate real estate fraud conspiracy. That's when we heard the sirens. Karen's face lit up with the kind of joy usually reserved for lottery winners or people finding perfect parking spots. The police, she announced triumphantly. Now you'll get what you deserve, you property thief. Property thief. I'd been called many things in my 34 years, some of them even true, but property thief was definitely a new one. The sirens grew louder, winding up the mountain road that led to my house. My house that was apparently no longer my house, according to the woman who'd been squatting in it for 6 months while I was making enough money to buy 3 more just like it. You know what, Karen? I said, settling into one of my own chairs, which was now buried under cushions, declaring, live your best life. I'm actually looking forward to explaining this situation to the police. She looked less confident for a moment. Just a moment. Good, she said, but her voice had lost some of its earlier conviction. Because trespassing is a serious crime. It certainly is, I agreed, pulling out my phone. Mind if I call my lawyer while we wait? The color started draining from Karen's face faster than water from a broken pipe. Outside, car doors were slamming, and I could hear voices approaching the front door. Heavy footsteps on my porch, followed by a firm knock. Police. Open up. Karen and I looked at each other across my living room, her clutching her phone like a lifeline, me sitting in my own chair like I owned the place, which, technically, I did, and Princess Precious yapping at everyone like the world's most ineffective security system. Should I get that? I asked politely. Or would you prefer to explain to the officers why you called them to arrest the homeowner for breaking into his own house? Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The knocking came again, more insistent this time. This should be interesting, I murmured, standing up to answer my own front door. Opening your own front door to find 2 police officers while a squatter stands behind you claiming you're the criminal is definitely not covered in any homeowner's manual I've ever read. Good afternoon, officers, I said, trying to project calm authority while internally screaming. I'm Marcus Davidson. This is my house. The 2 cops, one older with the kind of mustache that suggested he'd seen everything, one younger who looked like he was still figuring out which end of his radio to talk into, exchanged glances. Sir, said Mustache Cop, consulting his notepad, we received a call about a breaking and entering in progress. That's him. Karen's voice came shrieking from behind me, followed by the sound of Princess Precious adding her own editorial comments. He broke in. He has keys, but they're probably stolen. The younger cop, let's call him Officer Rookie, looked confused. Ma'am, if he has keys. Anyone can copy keys, Karen declared, pushing past me to get to the officers. She'd apparently decided that proximity to law enforcement would somehow validate her position. I've been living here for 6 months as the HOA representative managing this abandoned property. Abandoned property. There was that phrase again. Mustache Cop looked at me with the expression of someone who'd dealt with enough domestic disputes to recognize crazy when he saw it. Sir, can you provide documentation that this is your residence? Absolutely. I pulled out my wallet, retrieving my driver's license. This address has been my legal residence for 3 years. I also have the deed, mortgage statements, property tax receipts, insurance documents. All fake, Karen interrupted, because apparently she'd decided that volume and repetition were her strongest legal strategies. This is clearly an elaborate scam. Officer Rookie was now looking back and forth between us like he was watching the world's most surreal tennis match. Ma'am, these are some pretty serious accusations. Do you have any proof that this property was abandoned? Karen puffed up like an angry peacock. I'm the president of the Riverside Mountain Community HOA. When properties are abandoned, it's my responsibility to manage them for the community's benefit. And you determined this property was abandoned how? Mustache Cop asked. It was clearly vacant. No one had been here for months. Because I was traveling for business, I interjected. I was in Singapore working on a corporate merger. I have airline receipts, hotel bills, meeting schedules. All fabricated. Karen shrieked. That's when Mustache Cop held up his hand in the universal gesture for enough. Ma'am, I need you to calm down. Sir, do you have documentation with you? I nodded, pulling out my phone. I can access my bank records, show you mortgage payments, property tax payments, insurance payments, all current, all from this address. While I was pulling up documents, Karen was apparently having some kind of strategic crisis. She kept glancing between the officers and me, and I could practically see the wheels turning in her head as she realized her abandoned property story was developing some serious holes. You know what? She said suddenly, her voice shifting to a tone I recognized from every entitled customer I'd ever dealt with. Even if this is your house, I've been taking care of it. Do you have any idea how much work goes into maintaining a property this size? Maintaining it. She'd been maintaining my house. By living in it. For free. For 6 months. Ma'am, Officer Rookie said carefully. Are you saying you've been living in this house without the owner's permission? I was managing it. Karen protested. Someone had to. You can't just leave properties empty. They deteriorate. I was providing a service. A service. Karen had been providing a squatting service. Mustache Cop was now looking at Karen with the expression police officers develop when they realize they're dealing with someone who's completely detached from reality. Ma'am, living in someone else's house without permission, regardless of your intentions, is called trespassing. In some cases, it could be considered breaking and entering. But I'm the victim here. Karen wailed. I've been taking care of this place, and now this corporate criminal shows up with fake documents trying to steal my home. My home. After 6 months of squatting, she'd apparently developed some kind of adverse possession delusion. That's when I decided to play my trump card. Officers, would you like to see the security footage? Karen went very, very quiet. Security footage? Mustache Cop asked. I have a comprehensive security system. Motion-activated cameras, 24/7 recording, cloud storage backup. Everything that's happened on this property for the past 6 months should be thoroughly documented. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear Princess Precious breathing. That's illegal. Karen finally sputtered. Recording people without consent. Recording people on my own property, I corrected, is perfectly legal. And I'm quite curious to see exactly when and how you decided to move in. Karen's face was now cycling through colors like a mood ring having an identity crisis. Red, white, pale green, back to red. Officers, I continued, I'd be happy to show you the footage. I'm particularly interested in the part where she apparently decided my house was abandoned and moved herself in. Sir, Mustache Cop said, we'd very much like to see that footage. Karen made a sound that was somewhere between a squeak and a death rattle. Of course, I said, heading toward my home office. It's all stored on my computer, which, coincidentally, is in my house, which I own and have never abandoned. As we walked through the living room, Officer Rookie was looking around at the Karenification with barely concealed amazement. She decorated? He asked. Extensively, I replied. I'm particularly fond of the throw pillow that says, good vibes only. Really ties the room together with the motivational posters. Behind us, Karen was following with all the enthusiasm of someone walking to their own execution, Princess Precious tucked under her arm like a furry security blanket. This is harassment, she muttered. I know my rights. You absolutely do. I agreed cheerfully. You have the right to remain silent, the right to an attorney, the right to not squat in other people's houses. I was not squatting. Ma'am, Mustache Cop said firmly. Please let us handle this. We reached my office, where my computer was thankfully still where I'd left it, though it was now surrounded by crystals and what appeared to be a dream catcher made from recycled wine corks. Interesting decor choices, I murmured, powering up the system. Karen was now making small whimpering sounds. Let's see, I said, accessing the security system. 6 months ago would be. Here we go. April 15th. The footage was crystal clear and absolutely damning. Well, I said, as we all watched Karen's yellow Jeep pull into my driveway on the screen, this should be educational. Watching security footage of someone breaking into your own house while they stand behind you claiming to be the victim is definitely not a life experience they prepare you for in business school. The footage was painfully clear. April 15th, 2:47 p.m. Karen's yellow Jeep pulls into my driveway. She sits there for about 10 minutes, apparently conducting surveillance to make sure no one was home. Then she gets out, walks around the property, peers through windows, and tries the front door. Just checking for abandonment, Karen muttered behind us. But her voice had lost all its earlier conviction. Is that what we're calling it? I asked mildly. The footage continued. Karen walks back to her Jeep, retrieves what appears to be a locksmith's kit, and proceeds to work on my front door for approximately 45 minutes. That's breaking and entering, Officer Rookie observed. I prefer to think of it as emergency property management, Karen replied weakly. Mustache Cop gave her a look that could have frozen lava. Ma'am, you need to stop talking. The best part came next. After successfully picking my lock, apparently Karen had hidden talents. She went back to her Jeep and started unloading stuff. Suitcases, boxes, what appeared to be a year's supply of essential oils, and Princess Precious in a travel carrier. You moved in that same day, I observed. That's impressive efficiency for someone who just discovered an abandoned property. I was being proactive, Karen stammered. You were being criminal, Mustache Cop corrected. But the footage wasn't done entertaining us. Over the next several days, we watched Karen systematically redecorate my house. Gone were my carefully chosen furnishings, replaced by her collection of inspirational decor and aggressive positivity. She hung her wind chimes, installed her good vibes only doormat, and turned my elegant living space into what looked like a wellness center designed by someone having a midlife crisis. You threw away my furniture, I said, fast-forwarding through weeks of footage. I donated it, Karen protested. To charity. It was all so negative. Negative. My Danish modern furniture was apparently radiating bad energy. Ma'am, Officer Rookie said, consulting his notepad. Disposing of someone else's property without permission is theft. It was abandoned property, Karen wailed, but even she seemed to realize how weak that sounded now. The footage continued its devastating testimony. We watched Karen install a mailbox with her name on it. We watched her redirect my mail service. We watched her host what appeared to be HOA meetings in my living room, with several other middle-aged women sitting in a circle discussing community standards while Princess Precious held court on my Italian leather sofa. You used my house for HOA meetings, I said. The community needed a central meeting location, Karen replied defensively. In my house. That you broke into. That you're claiming was abandoned. While redirecting my mail and putting your name on my mailbox. When you lay it all out like that, even Karen seemed to realize her legal position was somewhat compromised. Mustache Cop was taking extensive notes. Ma'am, we're looking at breaking and entering, trespassing, theft, mail fraud, and probably a few other charges I haven't thought of yet. But I improved the property. Karen protested desperately. Look at how much more positive it feels now. The feng shui alone added thousands to the value. Feng shui. She'd broken into my house and was claiming feng shui as a legal defense. Ma'am, I said, fast-forwarding to more recent footage. Did you also improve my property by hosting what appears to be a wine tasting last week? The screen showed Karen and about 8 other women drinking wine in my living room, laughing loudly, and at one point someone appeared to be dancing on my dining room table. That was a community building event, Karen said weakly. In someone else's house. Officer Rookie pointed out. With someone else's wine, I added, noticing several empty bottles from my personal collection visible in the footage. I was just sampling it. For quality control. Quality control. Karen had drunk my wine for quality control purposes. That's when the footage showed something that made everyone in the room go quiet. Last Thursday, A man I didn't recognize had come to the house. He and Karen had what appeared to be a heated discussion on my front porch. Then he'd left several official-looking documents. Who was that? Mustache Cop asked. Karen suddenly looked like she'd rather be anywhere else in the world. That was nobody. Karen, I said, rewinding the footage to get a better look at the documents. That man looks suspiciously like a process server. I wouldn't know, she mumbled. And those documents he left looked suspiciously like legal papers. Karen was now the color of old mayonnaise. Ma'am, Mustache Cop said in his most official voice. What were those documents? They might have been, possibly. Karen, I said gently, what did you do? She took a deep breath, and when she spoke, her voice was so small I could barely hear it. I might have listed the property for sale. The silence that followed was so complete, I'm pretty sure we could have heard a pin drop in the next county. You listed my house for sale? I said slowly. The HOA needed funds for community improvements, she whispered. You broke into my house, lived there for 6 months, threw away my furniture, drank my wine, used it for meetings, and then tried to sell it. It seemed abandoned. While I was paying the mortgage, I finally lost my composure. I have 6 months of mortgage payments, property tax payments, insurance payments, utility payments, all from my accounts, all current, all proving this house was never abandoned. Karen looked like she was about to faint. Ma'am, Mustache Cop said, you're under arrest. But I'm the HOA president, she protested as Officer Rookie started pulling out handcuffs. Ma'am, you could be the Queen of England, and you'd still be going to jail. As they read Karen her rights, Princess Precious started howling like the world was ending. Which, from Karen's perspective, it probably was. What about my dog? Karen wailed. What about my house? I replied. Watching someone get arrested in your own living room while their therapy dog howls dramatic accompaniment is definitely not how I'd planned to spend my first day back from Singapore, but life rarely follows the script we write for it. Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent, Officer Rookie was saying as he cuffed Karen. And honestly, I'd recommend exercising that right. This is harassment, Karen protested, apparently deciding that more talking would somehow improve her legal situation. I'm being persecuted for community service. Ma'am, Mustache Cop said wearily, breaking into someone's house and living there for 6 months is not community service. It's a felony. As they led Karen toward the door, she turned back to me with the kind of desperate expression usually reserved for people watching their lottery ticket blow away in the wind. You don't understand, she said. I made this place better. The energy is so much more positive now. Karen, I replied, looking around at my living room full of inspirational posters and throw pillows declaring, live, laugh, love. I think we have very different definitions of better. But what about Princess? She wailed as Officer Rookie guided her toward the door. Princess Precious was currently hiding under my dining room table, still wearing her hand-knitted sweater and looking like the world's most overdressed fugitive. I'll figure something out, I said, because even though Karen had turned my house into a wellness center crime scene, I wasn't about to let a small dog become collateral damage. She only eats organic, grain-free food. Karen called over her shoulder as they led her outside. And she needs her anxiety medication twice a day. Of course she did. After the police left with Karen, I stood in my own living room feeling like I'd wandered into someone else's life. The silence was profound. No more Karen shrieking about abandonment. No more Princess Precious providing dramatic commentary. Just the kind of mountain quiet that makes you aware of how surreal your life has become. I pulled out my phone and called the one person who would appreciate the full absurdity of the situation. Dave? It's Marcus. Yeah, I'm back early. No, the deal went great. Listen, you're not going to believe this, but I just had someone arrested for living in my house. No, I'm not joking. Yes, she redecorated. Extensively. My lawyer friend Dave Harrison has known me since college, which means he's witnessed enough of my life's more ridiculous moments to not be entirely surprised when I call with stories that sound like rejected sitcom plots. Let me get this straight, Dave said after I'd explained the situation. This woman broke into your house, lived there for 6 months, threw away your furniture, used your house for HOA meetings, drank your wine, and then tried to sell the place. That's the condensed version, yes. And she's claiming she was providing a service? Community service through aggressive feng shui, apparently. Dave's laugh was the first genuinely positive sound my house had heard all day. Marcus, this is either the best story you've ever told me, or you've completely lost your mind. I have security footage. Oh, this I have to see. But first, we need to talk about legal consequences. This woman is looking at serious jail time. As Dave explained the various charges Karen would likely face, breaking and entering, theft, fraud, mail tampering, and something called adverse possession fraud, I wandered through my house taking inventory of the damage. My kitchen had been converted into what appeared to be a kombucha brewing operation. My master bedroom was now decorated with enough crystals to power a small city's worth of mystical energy. My home office had been turned into a meditation space, complete with singing bowls and what might have been an altar to the god of positive thinking. The good news, Dave was saying, is that everything she did is thoroughly documented. The bad news is that it's going to take a while to sort out all the legal complications. She apparently listed your house with 3 different real estate agents. 3. She was shopping for the best commission rate. Of course she was. What about the stuff she threw away? We'll add that to the damages. Do you have records of what she disposed of? I thought about my Danish modern furniture, my carefully curated art collection, my leather-bound book collection that had taken years to assemble. Some of it's irreplaceable. We'll make sure she pays for all of it. Plus emotional distress, plus legal fees, plus the cost of having your house professionally de-Karenized. While Dave continued outlining our legal strategy, I found myself in my bathroom, staring at what Karen had apparently considered improvements. My minimalist space had been transformed into an aromatherapy wonderland, complete with enough essential oil diffusers to fog up a football stadium. That's when I heard a small whimper from behind the shower curtain. Princess Precious was hiding in my bathtub, still wearing her ridiculous sweater, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else in the world. "Hey there, Princess," I said softly. "Rough day, huh?" She looked up at me with the kind of expression that suggested she was questioning all her life choices. "Dave," I said into the phone, "I need to ask you something. If someone gets arrested for living in your house illegally, what happens to their dog?" "Legally? It becomes your problem until other arrangements can be made." I looked down at Princess Precious, who was now making small, pathetic sounds that might have been an apology for her owner's criminal behavior. "Great. I've gone from international business executive to involuntary dog sitter in the span of 4 hours." "Look on the bright side," Dave said. "At least you've got an interesting story for your next dinner party." 2 hours later, I was sitting on my front porch, after removing all of Karen's wind chimes, with Princess Precious curled up on my lap like she'd accepted that her life had taken an unexpected turn toward sanity. The late afternoon mountain air was exactly what I'd been missing in Singapore, and for the first time all day, I felt like I could breathe again. My phone buzzed with a text from Dave. "Just heard from the prosecutor. Karen's been denied bail. Apparently, she listed 2 other abandoned properties for sale last month. This is bigger than just your house." I looked down at Princess Precious, who was sleeping peacefully for what was probably the first time in months. "Looks like it's just you and me for a while, Princess," I said softly. "But I promise, no more HOA meetings in the living room." She opened one eye, looked at me with what might have been gratitude, and went back to sleep. As the sun set behind the mountains, painting my property in shades of gold and purple that no amount of inspirational decor could improve, I realized that sometimes the best part of coming home isn't the familiar surroundings. It's reclaiming your space from people who thought they knew how to live your life better than you do. Tomorrow, I'd start the process of de-Karenizing my house. Tonight, I was just going to sit on my own porch, breathe my own air, and appreciate the fact that sometimes karma comes with handcuffs and a court date. So there you have it. The story of how I came home early from a business trip to find my house had been colonized by an HOA Karen who thought squatting was a public service. Like this, if you think breaking into someone's house and redecorating it isn't actually a favor, And comment below if you've ever had someone make themselves way too comfortable in your space. Trust me, there's always someone out there who thinks your life would be better if they were living it. Thank you for being with us. Please share in the comments where you are watching from and whether you liked everything, and see you next time.